All right, everybody, welcome into the O'Colly's first ever football 2020 season post-game show. I'm Ryan Novozinsky, joined here as always by my fellow beat writer Sudeep Tumma, and let's talk about the nonsense that we just witnessed in this 16-7 victory for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Everything, all the expectations that we had coming in, almost every narrative, every storyline that was coming into this game did not come into fruition and was replaced by something incredibly wacky. Namely, definitely the quarterback situation. So, Sudeep, let's talk about that first real quick. That's the elephant in the room we need to talk about. Shane Illingworth coming in. But first, we also had Ethan Bullock coming in, of course. So tell us what went down and what your thoughts on both of those guys were.
You know, like you said, this game wasn't even supposed to be close, right? It was supposed to be a blowout. We were just supposed to learn a bunch of things. We were supposed to learn about Casey Dunn's offense, how Spencer Sanders looks. It doesn't look good. But, you know, this was Oklahoma State's game plan. Just throw it up. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, when Spencer Sanders went down initially, I think Gunn even said he didn't even see the injury, right? Most people didn't even see it. He played a few more plays. He didn't look great. The whole offense didn't look great. But then you took him out eventually. Ethan Bullock came in, and I know we talked about Ethan Bullock a little bit. He didn't look the worst, even though his stat line looked pretty bad. I don't think the offensive line played too well.
No.
But I thought when I was looking at Ethan Bullock, a few drawbacks were his pocket presence was solid. He moved around a little bit of mobility. I think he was a better rusher than people kind of thought. And he was inconsistent with his accuracy, right? Didn't look like it was going to be the best of offenses under Ethan Bullock. And eventually, he threw a bad pick on a ball that should have been thrown up to Talon Wallace on a 50-50 ball. Eventually, they benched him and brought Shane Illingworth in. And when they brought him in, he didn't just play well, the crowd erupted, right? And that was just the first telltale sign. For the moment Illingworth walked in, you just felt a different aura, right? His confidence was off the charts. He just came in poised, didn't faze him that, you know, people were cheering, that he was taking a snap. If you didn't know better, if you didn't see the number, you would have thought it was just the same quarterback, right?
Yeah.
The same exact everything. And he came in and he was awesome from the start, right? His IQ, his decision making was awesome. He just looked poised, patient, confident, something you really don't see in a true freshman. And, you know, to me, that's something I always see with true freshmen when they come in. Or just, you know, players that come in for the first time, backups especially, teams will almost always go conservative, right? Just throw a short little pass, a little run, get the quarterback adjusted. But he came in and just bombed one down to Talon Wallace on a 50-50 ball, something they hadn't done all game long.
Yeah.
And that was very telling for me.
And it's always one thing, right, when you look at social media and you're like, oh, you know, people are armchair coaches, right? Like they're couch-side coaches, and they're trying to call the game. They're saying, oh, throw it up to Talon Wallace. In this case, it was actually true. The entire game, we've been wanting to see that. You know, maybe Bullock just didn't have the confidence to do that, or maybe it wasn't designed that way. But you're right. Like I was expecting, especially for this Oklahoma State team, right? In years past, it's been conservative even when you've had the good players there.
Exactly.
Now Shane Illingworth comes in, and you're thinking, okay, Gundy, it's going to be carry city for Chuba going forward.
Right.
Chuba's going to hate this. You know, LD Brown, who had a good game, is going to really have a much better game now, because they're just going to pad his stats. They're just going to have all of this, you know, runs designed for both of them, right? Like, and no one else. Heck, you might even see DeAndre Glass in there. Why not? Why not do all this goofy stuff if the way this year has been going and the way this game went? But no, you like you said, from the get-go, a 50-50 ball to Talon Wallace. Talon Wallace, by the way, the most aggressive receiver, goes out and just grabs things there's like it's nothing. Like, you see a great Talon Wallace today, a great performance from him today, and the way he did it, the way Talon Wallace was able to respond to three different quarterbacks was just an incredible, fascinating sight to see. And it's something that's good going forward for this Oklahoma State team, obviously. And in terms of confidence for Shane Illingworth, the fact that he was able to get this done, game one, I'm sure when he woke up this morning, he didn't think he was going to be able to go.
Doubt.
He was going to go to this game at all, unless it was like a 59-0 blowout.
Yeah.
In which case they would have put Ethan Bullock in, I think.
Seems like it.
Exactly, right? But it's a weird thing too, where he was not practicing the past 2 weeks apparently, and he comes in and he's all confident, as Tylen said after the game, and you could tell too. Even if Tylen didn't say that, even if Tylen said he was a nervous wreck, he looked confident in the way he played. His arm strength is off the charts. His confidence is great. His football IQ is incredible.
Awesome.
The way he's precise with his passes is something that I noticed too. He can put it on a dot, like in throwing these tight windows, and I thought that was really interesting. And with accuracy too, he's going to be a quarterback of the future here, don't you think?
Oh, no doubt. And I love what you said about that, because his pocket presence was very solid. He's, I think, a little bit more mobile than people realize. And you just love his poise for someone who's a freshman, right? He's very poised.
Yeah.
And you just saw it on the simplest of passes, right? The little Jelani Woods 2-yard dump off.
Mhm.
The fact that he wobble around instead of just running for something or freaking out or taking a sack or something, he just skirted down a little bit, threw a little one to Johnny Woods. That shows maturity for someone who's a true freshman. And there was high praise from everyone, right? Dr. Casey Dunn, Kylan Wallace, Trey Sterling, everyone had such high praise for this guy. And you felt like the only reason he didn't play is because he didn't practice, right?
Exactly.
And because of coronavirus. But played well, and he gave them not just a fighting chance, but he put them up, right? He made them the OSU that they normally are.
Yeah.
And the offense was sputtering to the whole game, right? Not the whole game, but most of the game for 3 quarters essentially. I mean, unexpected. Still mind-boggling.
Exactly, and it's a thing too where he elevated everybody around him. Not only the fans in these empty stadium chairs right now, and it was, I guess, half of them were empty during the game as well, but it was also the teammates too. I feel like the line blocked a whole hell of a lot better when he was on the field. Like when Illingworth came on, as opposed to, Ethan Bullock. I just think it was definitely a thing where you had that elevation effect from Shane Illingworth, and it was an incredible thing to see. Now, also, we got to talk about that line for sure, because this is something that they kept dropping like flies, I feel like, and it'd be one thing, okay, knock on wood, but it would be one thing if this happened to the defensive line, but it didn't. The defensive line would be fine. The offensive line, the depth is a surefire issue for this team. I mean, it just is, because you had guys in there. Tyrese Williams at one point. You had, we got to look at this depth chart real quick. Hunter Woodward, just people that you never expected to see in this game. I know we never expected Shane Illingworth to be in this game either, but when he stepped up, he filled that role. He filled that opportunity and was able to do great things with it. But what happened to this offensive line today, even from the beginning?
Yeah, and I'll say this. If there was a healthy O-line in front of him, I truly believe that the quarterback situation would not look this bad.
Agreed.
Right? When Ethan Bullock came in, it would not look like, oh my God, it was Ethan Bullock, right? Because like I said, I think he threw a little better than people realized, but at the same time, it wasn't really going to push the needle the way Shane Illingworth was, right? But, from the very beginning, when Spencer Sanders went down, you thought, okay, we have a Shane Illingworth, we have a Ethan Bullock in the building, right? So, okay, maybe OSU is not going to be that bad, because you got Chuba Hubbard, you got that run game, you got those weapons on the outside, a tight end, everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So you just need enough at quarterback. But if your O-line can't hold up, the rest of your team falls apart, right? That's something people always forget. But Charlie Dickey was doing his magic from the beginning, shuffling guys around. One point he moved Tevin Jenkins back to the right side.
Smart decision, by the way.
Yeah, because the right side was really having a lot of problems from the very beginning. When Cole Birmingham went down, when Andre Anthony went down, Bryce Schneider missed some snaps. I think.
Yeah. Josh Sills
missed some snaps.
Every starter.
Right, essentially. But by the end, they looked a lot better. Maybe some of that was on the Tulsa defense being a little gassed, but they played a lot better for sure.
Exactly, and I know you and I had talked about this Tulsa defense going in, and we don't have to necessarily break it down to a T, but this Tulsa defense was a lot better than we expected, especially coming into this game, especially in the secondary. I heard up in the press box, okay? I don't know if it was just me half listening to the broadcast because it was on a bit of a delay, but did someone compare them to the Legion of Boom?
I believe Todd actually said that, and it's an accurate comparison in the sense, well, poor man's Legion of Boom.
Yeah.
Right? And it's an accurate comparison in the sense that they are big, right? And last year they got burned a lot, and you saw that with Tom Walls last year with that team last year, right, playing Tulsa. But this year you thought, okay, this is going to be fluid, it's going to be easy. But no, they stepped up and they stayed glued to their guys, especially when Ethan Bullock was really out of sync, right? When that whole offense was out of sync, there was no respect to the run, right? Or sorry, to the pass. They just kept loading the box, cutting down Chuba Hubbard, LD Brown, whoever, but they just let Ethan Bullock test one-on-one coverage, which he didn't, which OSU decided not to do, and that's what happens. But again, one-on-one coverage is not just something you can luxuriously do, right? You have to have good corners and safeties and guys who are playing great, and they were, right?
Yeah.
That Tulsa front seven was playing solid. Zayvon Collins had a hell of a game.
Oh my God,
especially in the first half. Those cornerbacks, especially Ali Green, was testing Collins from the beginning. They're really getting their head. And I remember there was one play with Ethan Bullock where Ethan Bullock got a little bit of a roll. They were doing a little better. Then Talon Walls gets a screen pass, or even just a curl route. And for the first time, I saw the OSU of last year. Because I'll tell you why. Because time after time last year, everyone knows how good Talon Walls is down the field, right? He got open on curl routes all the time last year because he'd use that engine to go forward and then just stop and turn around. And you would see that time and time again. You didn't see that once this game until that one Ethan Bullock pass. But it got a little softer. Shane Illingworth definitely helped. That helped over the run game, and everything got better.
Yeah, Shane Ellerworth also, like, he added a more element of power to just to zip to his passes and stuff like that. Obviously from Ethan Bullock, and I don't want this to sound like this is the Ethan Bullock roasting show. Let's just say like this: when we were in the press box and everyone was like not freaking out in the press box, but on Twitter about Ethan Bullock and stuff like that, and I'm sure some people in the press box were thinking it. Even I was thinking it at first.
Sure.
You and I both said we took a step back. We were like, let's breathe a little bit. Let's start to think who this guy is and who he would be if he had, the Dallas Cowboys offensive line in front of him. I think he'd be a fine quarterback, an okay enough quarterback,
Especially how good this OSU line is normally.
Mm-hmm. And he had a little bit of stiffness to his throwing motion and stuff like that, but stuff like that, I feel like it's more of a confidence thing, and I think that is sort of a permeating thing throughout this whole game. I truly feel like it was a big game of confidence too, or not necessarily confidence going forward, but I think it was a game of lack of confidence, if that makes sense, because you had units like that offensive line, right, who at first when they were kind of sucking, and then later on in the game, Shane Ellerworth comes in, they get almost a boost of pride, then they start really honing in on those blocks and stuff like that, getting to the second level. And I know some of these blocking schemes too, like I told you before, a lot of it was just inside run schemes. When you're blocking inside run, these are basic concepts, right?
Sure.
You can get to the second level. That's all you there's not many combinations you have to do.
Sure.
It's really just like a straightforward type of deal. And they weren't able to get it done at first. Chuba Hubbard was bailing them out many times during that first half. And heck, even LD Brown. We go back to it. My boy LD Brown.
That's true. I think you really called it. I'm not sure I believed it till today, right? He looked stronger for sure, but his elusiveness, his patience, his burst, you saw acceleration.
Yeah.
He hit the hole well, and there's times where you just saw him running out, you're like, oh man, Chuba's in for that's not Chuba. And that was just, I think that's a big thing that we really have to take away from this game. Whether they won or lost, the fact that you had LD Brown break out like this shows that you really have a nice 1-2 punch. And for OSU last year, people always say, oh, is Chuba going to win Heisman? Is Chuba going to go 2,000 yards, break this record, that record? I didn't think so, simply because his not to take anything away from Chuba, but his high workload last year was part of the reason why he was able to get that many yards, right? And that's not to say giving someone a high workload is going to give him a lot of carries. It's a combination of both, right? And a big part of the high workload last year was the fact that they really had no depth, right? This year with LD Brown and these other guys, right, Desmond Jackson and so on, you have a much better group. And if LD Brown keeps playing this way, it's not only going to help Chuba and help this entire team, it's just going to make everyone better, right? Give you a solid option if Chuba would ever get hurt. But more important than that, when you're on the field, you have two guys where you can't take a rest to do the defense.
Exactly. I know you mentioned it earlier, 1-2 punch.
Exactly.
If LD Brown can sort of transcend to that guy who can be the solid number 2 guy, almost like Chuba Hubbard was to Justice Hill, like in those years. If he can really prove to be that guy, then this is a scary backfield for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And also, I think we forgot to mention too, so on the stat sheet here it says LD Brown 49 yards. Okay. There was one taken back too because Rye Schneider. We don't want to point fingers here, but it was him.
And I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure that he wouldn't have gotten that touchdown if not for that block anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe
good point.
The defender would have put a hand on him, but
LD Brown, he proved his explosiveness. He proved he can do it definitely this game.
Sure.
But now let's move on. We got to move on to the guys who sort of like bailed everything out as well, like even during the trying times, the defense. So what did you see out of this secondary today? Because I thought they played a heck of a game.
Oh, I thought they were awesome. From the very beginning, those cornerbacks were suffocating, right? The defensive backs were on them. And you already knew how good those safeties were, but to see Rodarius Williams and Jarek Bernard Converse sticking like glue.
Yeah.
These aren't just, when you think of Tulsa, you might not think of the best team, right?
Sure.
But these receivers are really, really, really talented, starting with Keelan Stokes. And there were so many plays where you would see the ball get thrown, your eyes immediately go to the receiver, and you'd see them stuck so close that you were sure it was going to be pass interference. So that's just how good that's just how good the defense was. And it was every play, and it wasn't just coverage. It was tackling as well. Rodarius had a great tackle on third down when they had that little jet sweep. Because everyone might look and say, okay, yeah, it's a tackle. But get a guy in space, like a big play, a very fast, explosive playmaker, again in a one-on-one situation, that's never an easy tackle for a defender, no matter how surefire tackling they are, right? But Rodarius did that. Rodarius is sticking in coverage. Even the one play where he didn't get beat, but the coverage was just, he drops off a little bit, he still came and batted the ball down.
Yeah.
Jarek Bernard was great. Cameron McAllister was solid as well. And this whole secondary was awesome, But it was all over. Right?
Yeah.
Like that's not just the secondary. You had Malcolm Rodriguez and Amen play heck of games. They were tackling machines. Malcolm, especially with the sack laid in, a lot of pressure from a lot of different spots. This whole defense, this front seven played awesome. You saw the depth once again, all over. And I think the depth was a big point. That was a big point. I really want to point out because halfway through I was thinking, man, with how up tempo Tulsa is and how many plays they're running, eventually OSU's got tired, right?
Sure.
And you think about it, you're like, no, they won't because think about the depth at every single position, right? You take out Trace Ford, you got Brock Martin. You take out Calvin, or you put Calvin Bundy and Devin Harper, just to replace Amen and Malcolm.
Sure.
Right? At every place, you got guys, defensive line entirely. You're fine. You can keep on rotating, and that's why OSU really never got gas versus Tulsa, who you saw get gas. But this defense just played tremendous all over.
Exactly, and you say that. I'm surprised they didn't get gassed. Of course, yeah, and I'm sure you are too. But because the star power on this team, right? Like the top end talent. When you got guys like Tanner McAllister, who really made a name for himself today, definitely in the tackling game, I thought his tackling was phenomenal.
That's something that definitely stuck out to me immediately.
And exactly, like you said too, with Malcolm Rodriguez and stuff like that, they were still able to do it on a consistent basis.
Yeah.
And they had the depth there too, of course. But I loved what I saw out of Tanner McAllister for sure. And definitely when I saw Jared Bernard-Converse, when he was on those Tulsa wide receivers, there was one play I think in the second drive where he just stuck to him like glue, like you said, to the point where I literally thought it was pass interference.
Yeah, because you look up and you're like, man, pass interference, that sucks.
Yeah.
And it isn't.
But him in man coverage was just, it was literally like such a perfect combination for him and him on these Tulsa wide receivers. And then definitely too, I think Trey Sterling played a heck of a game too.
He was all over. You know, he was in the box.
Yeah.
He was stopping the run. He got in some pass rush situations. He got him deep. And he is, you know, when he's one of those guys where I used to watch Earl Thomas in Seattle, and you would see they call him like the garbage man or something. He'd clean up everything where he was the last line of defense. And when Trey Sterling, you see him make a tackle, it's not that he's the last line of defense, but you see him make tackles, you're like, man, he's never gonna miss a tackle.
Yeah.
He just stops them in their tracks, puts them down. He is great all over. Colby Harville had a game-sealing interception, if you want to call it that. But that just shows, like, okay, this guy is just a ball hawk once again. He's healthy, obviously. You got guys all over. This defense is exciting. Yeah,
this defense definitely is exciting. And I think this was the one thing. Obviously, the offense was a total mess. We predicted that, I would say, but we weren't able to predict what the offense did, but the defense for sure we were able to predict that, and it came into fruition. And I'd say it came into fruition and then some, because I mean,
no doubt.
Keeping Tulsa, I know this Tulsa team isn't the most talented, but their line was a lot better than I thought they would be.
They definitely stuck out very well.
They're two running backs down, I know, but their running backs they were talented today. Obviously, Zach Smith's got the arm strength, and the receivers were a lot better than I thought. And then definitely, like, just as a unit, they played really well in the up tempo offense, like. The OSU's defense played a good team today, and they were able to limit them to just 7 points.
And frankly, that all came from one drive, right? Because you saw other stops where maybe they pushed it all the way down, or maybe they got the good field position, pushed it down, and then they stopped in the red zone, right? It was a fourth down where Tulsa just gambled a little bit, and OSU stopped everywhere. But there was one drive where you just felt like, all right, they're going to score no matter what. It was the one first Christian Holm get burned on the one, Tanner McAllister, whoever it was. And then Colby Harville was good defense, but the ball goes right over him. You see this stuff, and you saw that one drive, and you're like, okay, wow, this kind of sucks for OSU, but that was the one drive. Like, that's it. It was just a couple deep passes. Besides that, OSU stayed sound. Right? And that's the type of defense where if this offense gets back to how it was last year, even close to it, it's a scary team. It's a very scary sight. Like you said, you think Tulsa, you don't think great team, but this team played great today. When I say this team, I mean Tulsa. And that just shows how much better OSU was on D.
Yeah, exactly. And if you think about it too, Shane Illingworth came in with 2 minutes left in the third. Okay,
no doubt,
so you take the second quarter, early portions of the first quarter, and almost the entire third quarter, and you had a game where you had Ethan Bullock in there who, let's be honest with ourselves, I mean, he's not Shane Illingworth. Shane Illingworth was much better, and OSU was still able to win by 9 points, which is, I mean, I know it's not like a world-beating thing, but the spread was 23, and you think if you had Shane Illingworth there the entire time, I mean, it definitely would have got up there, I think, at least.
And that's a great sign for next game, right?
Yeah.
That's the main drawback here, where normally Spencer goes down, you're sitting there like, oh man, they missed his 4 weeks, it's going to be really tough for OSU, right? But now it's like, your mindset almost changes where if you hear that tomorrow that, oh, he's out 4 to 6 weeks, you're not really worrying after the performance Shane Allen was. Now, to make that clear, it's not to say he's going to be as good as Spencer Sanders was, right? Especially with the experience and all the talent, especially as a runner for Spencer. But it's a great sign for not only the future, but right now that you have a guy like Shane Allen.
Yeah, and it's more exciting too, I think, than Bullock, because with Bullock you don't have a future there. With Illingworth, he's the quarterback of the future. I know Spencer Sanders is only he's a
redshirt sophomore.
Yeah, redshirt sophomore now. Sorry, my mind was blank for a second. I thought he was a junior for a second. Obviously, he's been here for 3 years. But this is the guy of the future right now. Obviously, you have the future now with Spencer Sanders, but you also got another glimpse into that future, and it was a really interesting thing to see. Last couple of things we got to talk about today. Let's talk about Casey Dunn, the new offense. What do you think of it?
Yeah, I thought it was, a lot of this, what he kind of said over the offseason was it's going to be a lot of the same elements. And for the most part, it was, right? I saw a very up-tempo offense, which they did a lot of last year. It's good to continue. I saw a few pistol formation, full house formations. We have some tight ends in the back. Yeah. It's kind of interesting to see, right?
I thought that was really, they went like 13 personnel, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Which you rarely see, which is cool. And
Logan Carter was right.
Right, Logan Carter was right. They obviously didn't go very vertical in the beginning, but that obviously had to do with Ethan Bullock being in the game. You love the fact that they're testing the corners late in the game, which I think when you talk halftime adjustments, testing the one-on-one corners, right? That's something you were kind of looking for the whole time. You're like, okay, what are they going to do now? How are they going to adjust? That was a big thing, right? If guys play one-on-one and want to stack 8 in the box, bomb it down to Tylan Wallace, right? Not GOAT, but one of the goats.
The guy.
One of the goats of catching 50-50 balls, right?
Yeah.
The guy was only 6 foot, but he's much bigger than he plays. I mean, he plays much bigger than he is. And that was great. I liked how they played, call plays all game. I think the run game was solid. I think it was just injuries and just the weirdness, right? Just the weirdness.
Very much so weirdness. And maybe we'll see that a little bit next week against West Virginia.
Yeah.
But last question I got for you. Sure. Let's talk about the defense too. Sure. Jim Knowles, scheme-wise, what'd you think?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think it was a lot of the same elements. I think it's just the fact that you have better, not even better, but just guys playing better, right? Especially in the secondary. So we had a lot of questions. Overall, I like what he called. It was a good mix of bringing guys. I remember one play pointing out Calvin Bunger's coming in, 3rd and long, right? When it went from 3rd and 2 to 3rd and 7, bringing the guys in the right time, flipping guys out, having the right schemes. Sometimes they go heavy in the box, right? You just see one field back. Sometimes they got 2 in the back. You just switch it up a little bit depending on what you see. I think it was great, and I think it worked out well.
Confidence too. I saw them go 0 coverage one time, and I was like,
that's what I'm saying.
You know what? That, like,
different coverages.
To not have somebody deep back there, that is just confidence in your defense, and just a really incredible sight to see.
No doubt.
And we will see more of that going forward for OSU next week. They got West Virginia. They're coming right here to Boone Pickens Stadium. Follow all of our coverage with that at Ocali.com. Follow the Ocali on Twitter at Ocali. And definitely keep in touch with our work. We will be covering the OSU Cowboys all season long. For Ryan Novozinsky and Sudeep Tumma, have a great day.